Hey guys, so I took some time and just kind of cleaned up the insides of that tranny and the gearbox, and just played with the linkages and the thought process and everything. So what I ended up doing was I wanted to see where the shaft with that first and second gear were on, where their orientation was kind of when it was in the case, because you could actually slide it back and forth about 100 thou, I'd say. Quite a bit. It'll move in and out so much, and I think it's meant to do that so that you can adjust your ring and pinion. There's shims on this bearing. That whole housing drops down with the bearing, and then there's shims on it where you could set up, of course, your ring gear and your pinion gear, how they lash together. So that's one adjustment for that. I ended up taking the dry gearbox that's put back together, assembled it, and again, as I said, this train right here will move in and out because it has to have the capacity of adjusting the ring gear, and you can see the shims right there. So this assembly moves. You can see there's play within that washer right there. If you can see that right there, there's play. So what I did was I mocked it up dry, no gasket in it, but the gasket doesn't take up very much. It's a paper gasket. And set my feeler gauges to find out what that is, then put it back. Now this lever right here, this is third and fourth. This is first and second, and then this is reverse. It only has one position. Both of these have two positions. So if you follow that around, it works a fork. Here's the fork right here, and it comes right across, and it works this gear, which is kind of like the selector gear. It wants to grab between first gear and second gear. Now if you see the gap that's in between here, this is right up against second gear. It's in second gear. The detent is in its right spot. It's kind of locked where it wants to go. So you notice there's no gap there. Now I already moved. You see how it's got the fork on the rod, and you can adjust the fork on the rod. I already moved it forward 30 thou. I said, well, I'm just going to come forward a little bit and see if that improves it. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought I can mock it up and actually see what it's doing. So I kind of want to show you. No gap there between the gear and second gear, and the mesh is underneath this. You can't see it. See how that you got your sinker right there? These are what are getting locked together underneath. So if I push that the other way, that's neutral. You see a space there and a space there. Everything can turn. Everything's kind of free. Alright, now we're going to go for first gear. Now you're seeing first. Okay. Now my gap is still correct. That I know the shaft is going to be in the right position when it's all assembled. And look at the gap that's in between there. Look how much play that gear has to jump out. Now remember, I already adjusted it 30 thou that way, so I'm already favoring it that much. But that's how much play it still has to pop out of first gear, and I believe that would be what my problem is. And what happens is, figure second and fourth, you can actually kind of hold them in, because when let me grab the fork. There's the tunnel, and there's the fork. So this is your shift rod. This goes all the way up to your hand, essentially. And as you can see, it's in first gear. Now I could push into first gear all I want, but if you notice, that's right up against the body. There's nothing you're going to do to be able to get any more throw out of that. It's going to jump out of the gear no matter how much you're trying to hold pressure on it. And that's kind of like what I was dealing with. I had to baby it where it would pop. I don't know about the other way because I can't see inside there, but I would think that I'm not going to be able to pull it like that. When it's in second gear, if there's still some room from the case, you could actually probably pull past the detent on it if you actually had to hold it in second or fourth. But that's besides the point. What I'm trying to say is, that's first gear. That's first gear. That's how sloppy getting locked into the synchros is, it's not all the way there. Whereas when you saw it in second gear, it's too far the other way. All right, now it's second gear. And if you notice, I'm right up against the gear. I gotta put my whole assembly back where it goes. Right about there. That's it, right about there. And if you notice, I'm right up against the gear. And if I actually grab the gear, it's tight. And I was kind of wondering too, because I thought I saw on the shift fork, like rubbing on the back. Remember on the other video, I was kind of asking, what do you think? Do you think that's worn down? Well, I took a caliper and took the space in between here, and the space on the fork, it was still good. It wasn't like it was real sloppy, so it's not worn to the point where it's kind of floating around a little bit. It doesn't do that. But I did take a feeler gauge, yeah, second, or caliper, basically. Let's see if we can do this. Another way to show the same thing. Okay, that's pretty much the gap that I have in between when it's in neutral, how far away the gear is. And if you look there, I'm like, I'm going to say that's another 40 thou, 50 thou, 60 thou. Wherever that distance is right there, I could probably measure it, but you know, a definite noticeable difference. I'm going to even bump that up, probably more like about 100 thou. It's about 1/10 of an inch, I'd say. So that's how far off it is. So now what I'm going to go do is loosen that fork up, split the difference, so when I put it in, it's got a little bit of play on that side and a little bit of play on that side. And at the same token, when it does that, it's not going to be trying to ride on one side or the other. It's just going to want to sit there naturally. So I figure I'd share that with you. Now if it doesn't work, and you all call me an idiot, you call me an idiot anyway, but that's kind of where I'm thinking my problem was. I don't see any damage anywhere. I looked underneath real good again, underneath both sides of this to see if there was any chipped teeth or roundness. I don't see any. I don't see any on these. I took the other transmission, this one right here, which is the same thing, cleaned it real well and looked inside. I didn't see any different. It looks the same physically. So that's what I'm going with, guys. I thought about sticking this whole member in there, but there was damage on the pinion somewhere, just rust from sitting. So again, I think this will go for a mock-up kind of unit. And it was also good just for education too, you know. And I may take that other transmission apart and see what's up with that. And I got this for parts also, so between the two of them. All right, guys, so that has to all go back together again. And kind of one other thing I want to add with it, the reason why I had to assemble it is this front bearing gets bolted back down into the front, and it sucks this whole, I'll do it now, see how much plate is in that? I'll do it out here, see how much you can move that? So that whole assembly could shift that far according to how they want to set the ring and pinion up, and then you got to adjust the forks afterwards to kind of match that up. So that's where I believe I'm out. I made guide pins, 2 of them, to kind of help guide it down into the hole. And then this bearing is kind of a tight fit, so you can kind of like push it together. You got to hit it with a mallet, and it does go. But the guide pins kind of help keep the holes lined up and keep the gaskets on. And that, well, I used a piece of wood and a piece of brass to push it back out. So that, the bolts go in from that side, catch that bearing, and it pulls that whole assembly right down. And that's why I wanted to figure out what I had for the space on top. All right, guys, the camera's flashing. I think I'm out of video space. Take care. Bye.